Maayong adlaw and happy Pride. Welcome back to the Philippine X in Wellness podcast. This is Cheryl Sampson Ramirez, co-creator and co-host of the third episode in our sixth season titled The Multidimensional Aspects of Healing. Co-hosting this episode with me is Mark King. For our Pride Month feature, we proudly bring to you Reiki Teacher, Pangatauhan, Doctor of Chiropractic, Dr. Chris Lipat. Interviewing Dr. Chris was really a pleasure for us as we witness their evolution from activism into healing, starting with the Kilawin Kolektibo in New York City, transitioning and moving west towards the Bay Area where they acquired their chiropractic practice, moving to starting their business in Hawaii on the island of Oahu, gaining perspective from time in Guahan, also known as Guam, and really how all of these environments and experience led to what we know as the multidimensional aspects of healing in their mind body energy medicine practice. Tell us what you think about this episode and leave it in the comments below. Without further ado, we hope that you enjoy this episode. Hello, maayong araw and happy Pride Month. Welcome to our episode for our sixth season on the Philippine X and Wellness podcast. This is Cheryl, co-founder and co-host. My pronouns are she, her, sha. I'm broadcasting to y'all from Tovangar, the ancestral and unceded lands of the Tongva people, also known as Los Angeles, in the neighborhood of Echo Park. For my audio description, I have hair up to my shoulders with purple tints, black hair. I am wearing black and white and gold frame glasses. I have silver headphones that lie over my ears. I'm wearing a black sleeveless top, and in my background are vertical wooden slates. And co hosting this episode with me is Mark King.
Hello, everyone, and happy Pride Month. As Cheryl was saying, she is in Los Angeles. I am also down the street from Echo Park. I am wearing as for my audio description, I'm wearing a uh, plaidish black and white hat. I have a goatee beard that's pointed at the chin, salt and pepper. I have a green, army green shirt, and in the back is two lamps on either side and a tapestry up against a white wall.
Following our last episode, How Vulnerability Helps Filipino Men Heal with Daniel Bilog, Jason Bueno, and Mike Sagun, we bring to you in alignment with Pride Month, New Jersey born and raised, but currently Oahu, Hawaii based, Reiki Teacher and Pangatauhan, Dr. Chris Lipat, Doctor of Chiropractic. The title of this episode is The Multidimensional Aspects of Healing. As mentioned in previous episodes, all views discussed are for informational and educational purposes only. It's not meant to be medical advice, nor does it constitute therapy or professional advice. Always consult with your healthcare practitioner, especially before starting any exercise or new health program, or a qualified mental health professional for your particular condition. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome to the Philippine X and Wellness podcast Dr. Chris Lipat. Aloha at mabuhay.
Aloha, happy Pride.
Aloha.
Happy Pride.
Yes. So, Dr. Chris, we typically like to open up our episodes with knowing where our guests are from. So, can you please inform our community where both sides of your family are from and where you are currently streaming from at the moment?
Okay. Well, I'm Dr. Christiane Lipat, and I am streaming from Kaka'ako in Honolulu on the island of Oahu and the occupied land of the Kanaka Maoli. Uh, Just for background, my pronouns are they, dak, sha, or she, or any respectful pronoun will do. I have short, cropped, dark hair. I'm wearing a green binnacle-like pattern button-down shirt. And I'm in my office with an art piece of red tea plants behind me alongside my tools and elixirs on a shelf. I'm Aquino Tiaño on my mom's side from Alcala and Cagayan Valley. Although my grandparents migrated to Sabanan land in Zamboanga, and my mom was born in Sindangan, Zamboanga del Norte. I'm Aranda Lipat on my dad's side from Lipa City and Balintawak in Batangas.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're excited to have you here on during Pride Month, hailing from the Rainbow State. Let's warm up and introduce you to our community by starting off with your origin story. Your origin story. As you did mention, you're originally from Jersey, and in the '90s, you were a part of the Kilawin Kolektibo, a New York City queer Panay lesbian collective with a documentary that has been circulating around the film festival circuit titled "Because of You: A History of the Kilawin Kolektibo." For those of us who had missed it or have not seen it yet, could you tell us a little bit about the Kilawin Kolektibo, what it is, and how you got involved with this collective?
So, yes, Kolektibo was a collective of mostly first and second generation, or even 1.52, as some folks called themselves, generation queer Pinays based in New York City. A lot of us first met during pride marches in the early 90s when the pioneering Kambal sa Lusog, which means Twins in Health, which was a Filipino lesbian and gay organization at that time, marched down Fifth Avenue collecting new members along the way. So the women in Kambal sa Lusog also became involved in Gabriela Network, which was being mentored at the time by Ninochka Rosca, a novelist and a former political prisoner under the Marcos regime. She taught us so much about feminist and revolutionary organizing histories in the Philippines at that time. So as we were being politicized around that time, in 1994 was the 25th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, and there was another international Pride March, and a lot of Filipino queers from around the country and also from Canada came down to participate in the march. And we met a group called Babaylan, which was from Toronto, and they actually inspired us to create our own group. And so we ended up calling our group Kilawin Kolektibo. Kilawin is a Visayan term for raw fish prepared in a spicy vinegar sauce like ceviche. And so we wanted to capture that energy of rawness, spiciness, being our own authentic selves, especially as young folks in New York City at that time in the 90s. And then Tibo is a slang for the term lesbian. So, from the Philippines. So we put our own twist on the word collective and turned it into Kolektibo. So from the beginning, we were really passionate about Pinay queer women's visibility, and we decided to document and archive everything. At that time, we actually had members who were in filmmaking, and so they took footage and eventually turned that into a documentary, which is going around the film festival circuit today. Um, but I think what spurred us to create this group is that at the time Gabriela Network was tackling the abuse of Filipina mail order brides in the diaspora. And actually, one of our first actions when we started the group was writing a letter to The Advocate, which was a national gay publication, because we wanted to call out the stereotypical portrayal of Filipina mail order brides that was in the movie Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. It was one of the first gay crossover films that was shown in mainstream theaters. um, Also, around that same time, there were mainstream gay fundraisers being held on the Intrepid, which was a battleship that had served in Vietnam. And we spoke out against the gay agenda being advanced at the expense of our communities. Um, and so we felt the strength to be able to speak to these issues because, even across first, 1.5, and second generations, we shared this base of education culture and a deep need for belonging. And so from that grounding, we found our identities and then our voices and then our ability to take on leadership roles. So from
Wow.
yeah, so from there I actually ended up um I was working at a place called Asian American Arts Alliance at the time.
Mhm.
And met a lot of folks in the arts scene. And then I ended up joining and becoming a staff person for Estrella Lesbian Foundation for Justice, which funded LGBT organizations around the world. So that was my origin story, at least in New York City.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to open up Pride Month with some of your background, coming from New Jersey and New York, and getting really involved in all the organizing activism work. You said the group before Kilawin Kolektibo in New York was, you said Kambal.
Yeah, Kambal sa Lusog.
And what did that mean, just in
It
case
it means
folks are
twins
wondering?
in health. And that group actually came out of a time when the Miss Saigon musical in Broadway was happening, and so I think some Asian American groups were protesting some of the portrayals or the actors that were chosen to portray, a lot of the issues around that. But in any case, Asian American Writers Workshop came out of those protests, and then Kambal sa Lusog also came out of those protests as well.
Well, this is a great part of history that I'm learning about through your words, Dr. Chris.
Yeah.
So you started in New York and New Jersey, organizing with Gabriella, with you said Babaylan in Toronto, Kambal, oh my God, Lusog. Then, going into Kilawin Kolektibo, and then he ventured off into a healing journey, right? So tell us, how did you shift into what you titled for this episode, "The Multi-Dimensional Aspects of Healing"? You're, now a chiropractor, a Reiki teacher, a Pangatauhan. What came first in this journey?
Well, I think when I was getting into that work of social justice organizing, speaking out on our issues, I was really passionate about that work. And I ended up actually working a lot. I don't know. I felt like all of that work was on my shoulders. All the responsibility was on my shoulders to support, the through my professional work, LGBT organizing around the world, and then also to support, queer people of color organizing in New York City. And I don't know. I just took it all on and thought it was all mine. And so I was burning out. I was burning out thinking that I could, um, I don't know, control all the outcomes and, save everyone and all the things. Um, and so that's actually the time when Reiki came into my life. I was having migraines, I was having just, anxiety, I was gaining weight. And a mentor of mine in Kilawin, one of our older members, Panday Banale, she had taught us a lot about. She introduced us to Joy Ayala, to Grace Nono, and then also to Baybayin at the time. Baybayin was our pre-colonial Philippine script, and so she was actually one of the first in the States to kind of revive the usage of that alphabet through her jewelry making. And so she would teach us about that. And so also at the time, she met and introduced us all to another Gabriella member who had just moved into New York City, and her name was Maria Socorro Laya Smith. And she actually had was an organizer against the Marcos dictatorship in the Philippines. She was also a pranic healer at the time. And when she moved to the States, she actually learned Reiki. And she thought that there was actually a lot of value to this healing modality. Reiki is a Japanese form of energy healing. And, it's a form of energy healing where the energy is coming from kind of like a universal source, and then the practitioner is able to kind of channel or radiate this energy to the recipient, and then the recipient is drawing this energy through to be able to help balance their energy system. And so, um, in any case, when we learned Reiki, to me, it was like magic. And I actually grew up reading fantasy books in New Jersey. That was kind of how I survived, just living in that world of magic. And I don't know, I just really took to it. So Soki taught all of us Reiki, and a lot of us actually ended up move, going into the alternative health field. I know another member of ours actually ended up going into acupuncture. A couple of other members went into, social work and therapy. And so from there, it really helped me with my burnout. If I had anxiety, if I wasn't able to sleep, I would Reiki myself, and then I would be able to get through the day as though I've had a good night's sleep. There are times when it would be really challenging around like fiscal issues in our organization, and so I would send Reiki or intentions, that things kind of turn out with our budgeting or whatever, and we were able to make it through. And so it was able, it helped me to get through what I needed to finish some responsibilities, and to realize that the way I was living my life at that time was just not sustainable. And so I put in my notice, a year's notice, and I decided to move out of New York City to California, because I knew that if I stayed in New York City to be able to change my life, I had a hard time creating boundaries. um, and so by leaving, I thought that would be a way to just kind of help me to reset and reground into myself, and also to what I was meant to do next. And so from there, I guess, long story short, is I ended up, I thought I would practice Reiki out in California. But, I was going to practice Reiki in this new place, and start a new business where I had friends, but, I didn't have roots. And also I didn't know much about the holistic healing field at the time. I just knew that I wanted to practice Reiki. And so I ended up actually figuring out that I wanted to work part time in the holistic healing field. And so I looked, and I ended up working in Craigslist, and I ended up working part time for a chiropractor. And so I was able to learn more about chiropractic at the same time that a friend of mine also was in chiropractic school. And so from there, I ended up, um, I just found it fascinating to be able to learn more about holistic healing, and to learn, even though I loved Reiki, but I just wanted to learn more about the body. And so I felt like chiropractic school was the way that I wanted to do it. I was pre med in undergrad, and I was kind of on track to go to med school, like my father or my mother was a nurse. Um, but at the time, I went to a college, Oberlin College, where, we learned a lot about critical thinking. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know that if I went into med school, I don't know that I could stay there and not try to change the system. It was just my nature. um, and so, that's when I took a pause and ended up going into social justice work. And so, actually, when I paused from social justice work, that's when I was like, oh, maybe it's time to go back into healing. But from it just felt better from this paradigm of holistic healing rather than from, a medical standpoint, in terms of really what I wanted to do, right? Because I was trained to look at root causes, right? To look at, why, and to really question and look at underlying issues. And so it just, went along with my nature to really, look more deeply at what goes into health and into healing.
Wow, I find so many parallels in what you just shared, from having family from Mindanao. Your your Zamboanga side is right next to my mom's Misamis Occidental side in the Philippines. I'm like, I see you there. I totally relate also to you talking about um having that activism and organizing background and feeling the burnout, so many of our community has gone through similar experiences, right? Of giving so much um, in uh, feeling our movements, filling each other people's cups, and then finding that we're feeling depleted in the end, and having that show up in somatic ways that challenge the body or the psyche, right? Um, Realizing there's just so much work that we also need to do that's impacted from like, been reoccurring in all of our episodes is the multi-generational trauma that we also need to, you know, go through, right? Or, like, work through, have breakthroughs in. So, it's interesting because 'cause I'm hearing you talk and I'm like, "Me too," right? I'm like, great and I'm like, right after that, I went into healing too, and, that's, like, some of the things that, like, fed into the creation of this podcast. But, um, as I listen to you talk, there's also these questions that arise. So you mentioned it Soki? You mentioned Soki was a pranic healer. What's, a pranic healer for folks that don't know what that is?
Um, Pranic healing is another form of energy healing as well. I actually don't know as much about it, although
Okay.
it had a lot more, there was a lot more people practicing it in the Philippines at that time. And so I think she found a difference between Reiki and Pranic healing, but I couldn't tell you specifically what that is.
Yeah. It sounds like it might have some roots in India,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
prana, has to do with, like, the breath.
Mhm.
So so Reiki, there's also different teachers and lineages. What lineage, of Reiki do you practice from?
So, I guess through Usui, who was the founder of the particular Reiki system that we practice, he developed this in the early, I think, 1920s. And eventually, there was actually a person, a Japanese woman from Hawaii, who went to Japan and learned about Reiki and received the energies there, and then eventually ended up learning and bringing that um, Reiki back to Hawaii. And actually, from there, I think not until this was kind of before the war, but it really wasn't until the 70s that, as she got older, that she felt really compelled to be able to teach to a wider audience. And so that's when I think she taught Iris Ishikuro, who then ended up teaching a couple of other folks who then ended up teaching our teachers in New Jersey, who then ended up teaching my teacher. So along the way, though, I think the challenge with Reiki is that, of course, as it moved from Japan to the US, especially during the time of the war, um, a lot of elements, Japanese elements around it, fell by the wayside, right? To be able
Mm,
to make it able to be, taught and accepted here. And so with that vacuum then, people start to bring in other understandings of energy just to kind of fill in the void of so then that's where the chakra system was coming in, or people would add back in some Japanese understandings of energy. And so, I'm just grateful that that lineage survived, even as it had to, you know, do what it had to do to survive. But I think the fact that, you know, when something is true, it's universal. And so, eventually, people still continue to find value in the Reiki energy. Um, So yeah, it's really a wonderful energy.
and then even, like, hearing about your story going from Reiki into chiropractic school and being a pre-med student, I'm like, "Oh, man, Dr. Chris was, like, the ideal child that everyone's parents is like, you either become a doctor or a lawyer, and you're like on your path, to med school, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm gonna go now into chiropractic school and
I
look
know.
at causes.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
And it's, it was challenging for my parents to understand, right, what I was trying to do. But I was just following my path, and I'm so grateful to them though that even though, we didn't see eye to eye, that they still continued to love and support me. And then yeah, even coming out as queer, to continue to have the love and support of my family. I've been so blessed with that. That's for sure.
Mhm.
And that's what's allowed me to um, be creative and to move here to Hawaii and to create, the method that I've created, and that I hope to share with others as well. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I've been able to teach Reiki, and that's been really great.
How does your Reiki inform your approach to chiropractic work, or does it?
Well, I mean, they have very similar philosophies, right? That the power that made the body heals the body. Um, but from there, it's just a matter of um emphasis. So for instance, chiropractic looks at alignment of the spine. It looks at the balance of the nervous system. And we're looking at al- when you align someone on the physical level, hopefully it impacts on other levels as well, right? In chiropractic, but the first entry is through the physical level. In Reiki, it's talking about balance, but it's talking about balance from an energetic level, right? And so, looking at the intersection of those things is actually of those modalities as well as others, I think is actually really generative. And so I was able to find an approach, which is called applied kinesiology or muscle testing, that helps me to take all the different kinds of modalities, and to find the particular interventions that are most relevant to a person at that time in their healing, and to apply them in a way that, you know, is bespoke. I was joking around with a friend about, how this kind of work, when you have all these different tools, right? And a lot of folks in the healing arts, will gravitate towards a lot of different tools, right? But how do you apply them and bring them all together in practice in a way that makes sense at the right level at the right time? And so I was able to figure out a system for doing that, which I hope to teach. And I actually write in my book. I wrote a book about it too during COVID to help folks with that.
Oh, what's the title of your book?
Yeah, it's
In
called
case folks wanna pick it up, yeah.
yeah, it's called Knowing the Intuitive's Guide to Transformative Healing. And right now it's just available as an ebook. And you can actually get it through Amazon or Kobo. Um, but it felt like, it's kind of like a sort of like my thesis, I suppose you would say, kind of bringing all the things that I learned in my life together into how I then apply it in practice.
Yeah, what is the title of your book again?
It's called Knowing the Intuitive's Guide to Transformative Healing, and it's on
Knowing the
Amazon.
Intuitive's
Mhm.
Guide to
Transformative Healing.
Transformative Healing,
Yeah.
and you said it's available on Amazon or Kubo? There's a Kubo Long Beach, so just wanna make sure
Kobo.
we could
No, it's
differentiate.
called Kobo, Kobo. Yeah,
Kobo.
it's
Got
an
it.
alternative kind of independent site from Amazon in case folks don't want to purchase that.
Support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, Kobo. Um, I also wanted to ask you, I love what you just said. You said, I think the same thing that makes the body heals the body. That was a really powerful statement that you said earlier when you were talking about your work. You mentioned muscle testing is your specialty or your one of your foci. Can you explain to the our diaspora what is muscle testing and I know I actually see a chiropractor here locally in Altadena who does muscle testing, but I don't think I would be able to explain what that entails to someone. So if maybe you'd do a better job at it, Dr.
Yeah.
Chris.
A lot of chiropractors, a lot of holistic practitioners practice muscle testing. Um, it's it's described as a diagnostic feedback tool that uses the muscular system to communicate with the nervous system, revealing functional imbalances across structural, chemical, and emotional health. So you would actually isolate a muscle group and apply steady pressure, right? So kind of like this. And if there's no stress, the joint will lock kind of in a neutral way. But if you introduce a stressor, let's say a false statement or like, my name is Chris, but then if I say, my name is Cheryl, automatically you see like an unlock in the joint signaling a stress response. Or, if I was allergic to peanuts, if you apply pressure and I think of peanuts, I'm going to immediately get weak. So it's actually been a really extraordinary way to listen to the wisdom of the body and to
Mm.
be able to ask questions on what the body needs to come back into balance. And so that's been a way for me, to to figure out how to access the wisdom of the body.
And what for those of you that are listening to the episode, what Dr. Chris was doing as they were explaining muscle testing was they had their arm stretched out and with their hand they were pushing down on the arm as they were asking questions. So that's a little bit visually of what we were seeing on the screen. Okay, now you kept going west. So you went from New Jersey, New York, and then the Bay Area. You mentioned Oakland prior to this. And then from Oakland, you're now in Hawaii, Oahu to be specific. Um, Tell us about how did that influence your healing journey? Did you acquire certain things along the way? Or what made you decide to go from Oakland to actually, more specifically, what made you go from Oakland to Hawaii?
Yeah. Um After while I was in school, I actually visited Oahu a couple of times. I had visited friends, and when I did, I actually felt the energy of the land in a way I'd never experienced anywhere else. And so I took it as a calling. I took it as a calling. Um, Even though I only knew a few people, somehow I believed I could start my own business here. And of course it was again, I'm starting another business. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But of course the first thing when you come here is you learn quickly to listen first, to learn about Hawaii, about the history of the Filipinos here. And it's very different from, New Jersey. I really knew and I felt that I was a settler, and I immediately wanted to find ways to give back to the land and to the community. So when I landed here with other Filipino folks here, Filipinx folks here, some migrants, some born and raised, I helped to actually create decolonial Pinays and Pinoys to raise our visibility and support Hawaiian sovereignty. So again, I had this practice, right, of kind of
Wow.
creating a group. And so that group here was active for a couple of years. And this was where I learned more about the complex divide between Pacific Islanders and Filipinos, and the role of the colonial mindset and settler politics, and how it all plays into that divide. Um, so that was really interesting to explore and to find out more about. Um, in terms of when I moved here, of course, starting my own business, I had new health challenges, right? Food allergies and asthma got triggered by the financial stress of building a practice. And so that led me deeper
Mm.
into functional medicine, deeper into applied kinesiology, and deeper into the muscle testing. Um, and that's where, I really realized, and I really believe that, just as in Reiki, right? Your body is the doctor. Your body is the one in charge. Me, I'm really just a facilitator. Yes, I have the training in functional medicine and chiropractic, even in Reiki, to kind of just and to understand what comes out, and what kind of uh, answers we're getting from the body, just to make sure that it kind of is in line and kind of makes sense. But mostly, um, when you boil it down to the elements, in terms of what the body needs, right? Because the body, the body is has gives there's structure, there's support, there's fascia, right? It plays a huge role in our health. And actually, fascia is something that medicine has only kind of recently discovered, in a way. The interstitium, they're like, there's a new organ. I remember some headlines like the interstitia. But in any
What is
case,
sorry, what is the fascia?
fascia, yeah, fascia is really the connective tissue that connects organs and systems and all, the tissues of the body together. It's our connective tissue framework, basically. Right. And so that's where the
Hmm.
meridians flow through the
It's
fascia.
kind of like our body's mycelium
Yeah,
network.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's providing the structure, the support, lubrication to the muscles, organs, nerves, and vessels. But also, the fascia is like a dynamic sensory, electrical, and vibrational system, constantly reading the world through frequency, right?
Wow.
So in
Yeah.
my work, I use Reiki, I use sound therapy, I even use oracion or affirmations. I use frequency microcurrent, vibrational percussion, and then even gentle chiropractic instrument adjusting to communicate with your nervous system and the fascia in the language that they understand, right? Which is vibration, touch, sound, and energetic coherence. So, when that happens, when you kind of are able to interact with the body in that way, it shifts the body from pain and tension and defense into repair and reorganization. And so the idea is then, if the body feels safe, and the body mind feels safe, then it can begin to heal and regenerate, right? But when the body does not feel safe, right, when it's in a fight or flight response, it's, you know, it's breaking down, right? It's keeping your blood sugar high so you could run away from the tiger. It's suppressing digestion because, again, digestion takes a lot of energy and you don't need that to run away from the tiger, right? Your heart rate is up because, again, you need to be able to have that ready energy to run away from the tiger. And right now, the body doesn't know the difference between the tiger or like a really stressful deadline. It's all the same to the
Yeah.
body, right?
Yeah.
So I don't remember what the question was, but
No, I just listening to you
going down the
speak, and I'm
rabbit
like,
hole.
no, I'm like, I don't know how Marquine is feeling, but I'm like, wow, we're so lucky to have Dr. Chris as our Pride Month guest. I mean, just your experiences as you're sharing and your knowledge. It's such a I just feel so fortunate to be having this conversation with all of these different lives you've lived, and that you're able to just share it with us on our podcast.
Do you feel like with your with your work you have two at least two different modalities you've been talking about, Reiki and chiropractic work. Do you feel like one is more effective than the other as far as energetic flow or just how your body responds energetically? Does that make
It
sense? Do you know what
it
I'm
really,
saying?
you know, I think that's a good question because um a lot of my patients or who I deal with more are folks like in their 30s to 50s, where their bodies are kind of starting to feel their body breaking down, and especially under the loads of chronic stress. So those are the kind of folks that come to me. So oftentimes, the some of the lower force interventions are the energetic interventions, are what's needed in those situations because their nervous system is so on edge. So I actually find that, I gravitate more towards a lower force kind of chiropractic because I think sometimes the regular chiropractic adjustments that folks are used to can be too much force or too much for the nervous system for some of my more chronically stressed patients. And so I gravitate more towards lower force approaches. So yeah, so within that, Reiki fits nicely because there is no force and it really like um it's an energetic uh approach where the patient is really bringing in the energy that they need, so the patient is really in charge of their own healing in that way. And then or I may use chiropractic instruments which are much more lower force, um that are only applied in particular places and areas where the body's asking for that kind of physical intervention. So, oftentimes for me, if someone comes in with like neck pain, that's a whole big question. It's not just like, "Oh, is there misalignment? If so, let's adjust it and bring you back into alignment." No. For me, the question is, okay, um, well, is there a structural component? Is there deficiency or toxicity? Is there an emotional thing going on? Um, is there an ancestral tendency going on? So because the throat, right? The neck, kind of intersects with the throat chakra, right? Which is in Reiki, and then also, of course, it's a hidden Hindu metaphysics concept. But throat chakra is about speaking your truth, right? About being connected to your creativity, things like that. So if you're not expressing your truth, or being in touch with that, um, that can create stress, accumulated stress, which can tighten up the muscles in the neck. Or if there's deficiency and toxicity of the thyroid, that could also create tension in the neck, right? Because your body has to tell you, something needs to change, something is off, and so that's how the body communicates. So um, so there's not one method that's better than another. It's just a matter of what is the appropriate intervention at that time and place in a person's kind of spiritual evolution.
Wow. I want to see you when I go to Hawaii.
Yeah, I
And
think
also, yeah, or it can adjust, but if you're having deficiency or toxicity, you're gonna have to keep coming back and getting adjusted, which is fine, more money for me. But
Yeah.
also it's keeping you balanced until you can and buying time until you can get into the root causes, which is also fine too.
the follow-up question, or not question, but the observation was, because part of the origin of that question I was asking was, I imagine for myself when you're getting adjusted, your chakras can get realigned. So I wonder if that helps with the energetic flow, right?
All of it does. Yeah. I mean, that's why there's multiple ways. Well, that gets into the topic of, the multi-dimensional aspects of healing, right? Um, and so yeah, looking at something like neck pain and then trying to figure out what are the different things going on sometimes at the same time. Um, so yeah, deficiency, toxicity, emotional, not being able to speak your truth,
I love that.
organ gland imbalance.
Yeah. You also mentioned something important that like I'd like to hone in on is you mentioned low force. Because I think that a lot of people or there is this notion that if I'm going to see a chiropractor, they're gonna crack my back. But there's so many types of chiropractic work that you can seek, and what you mentioned was low force.
Yeah. So there are many low force modalities. A lot of them involve instruments. So like there's the activator instrument, or the integrator instrument. And I don't know, it, how do I describe it? Or I could show you what it looks like, but it sounds like a stapler, so it sounds louder than it is, but it's like a little thing that sends an impulse, a very
Oh,
brief
like a shot, that
impulse
shot
into
thing.
a Yeah, exactly. But it's when you adjust with your hand, you kind of the force is a little bit spread, depending on the skill of the chiropractor. And so then sometimes a person is bracing, so you need even more force to kind of get through. But with an instrument, because the surface area is very concentrated, you don't need a lot of force. And then also we're also addressing other aspects of what's going on underneath. Sometimes again, you don't need a lot of force to be able to reset that area of tension, and to address it and to release that tension. So
Yeah,
and then
I
there are
really
modalities that don't use instruments
yeah.
at all, but just use very light touch to be able to again institute a shift and in the nervous system to one of safety rather than one of like bracing and stiffness.
One of the things that I like hearing when you're sharing with us is that your approach is very listening to what the body is telling you and then allowing you to be guided by your client's needs in eventually having them learn how to listen themselves and heal themselves. I mean, there's not so many healers out there that really take that approach, and I think that's a really respectful way for you to approach your style of healing. I want to mention also and bring it back to what we started with in your bio is that you're also Pangatauhan, if I'm saying that correctly. Explain to our global audience out there, what is a Pangatauhan and how did this opportunity come your way?
um, let's see. So Pangatauhan actually means diviner in Tagalog. And it was actually a title that was given to me by my teacher, Rolando Camon, or Apu Adman, who founded the Hilot Academy of Binabalan. And actually, I received it after completing an online course that they offered in Hilot, and Filipino spirituality during the pandemic in 2020. So I had actually been watching them for quite a while. And so when they offered a virtual offering of learning more about Hilot, I jumped on the opportunity, and it was really a wonderfully um, done course. The curriculum was very comprehensive. Especially coming from my background, going to chiropractic school, things like that. I was actually impressed with how they were able to translate our traditional healing system into ways that, us in the diaspora can grasp and understand, and relate to. So I really appreciated their course. And I feel like the attunements that were offered during that class really strengthened my connection, even more so to the spiritual energies of our ancestral homeland.
Definitely. We were really fortunate to also have Apu Adman on our podcast a few episodes. So it's funny how all the connections. It's really cool to see the trajectory of your healing journey and how one thing led to the next, uh, which leads us to our next topic, your business. I know it brought up about some stress starting your own business, as you mentioned, coming to Hawaii, having the food allergies, the asthma, your body really shifting to this new environment and this new chapter. But let's also talk about what is mind body energy medicine. That's the name of your practice. When did you start this? And tell us what mind body energy medicine entails that you haven't mentioned to us already.
Moving to Hawaii, and connecting with the Kanaka Maoli and the local decolonial Pinay group, deepened more my understanding of indigenous ways of looking at the world. And so like to witness real hula. which is like biology and history in dance form, basically. To experience chanting up the sunrise, to experience, the idea of following moon cycles for planting and fishing, to make offerings of vai or water and flowers to a part of the island we're visiting from the place that we live in. So to find the nourishment, the grounding and healing in the traditional foods of the Pacific, and in our own traditional foods, watching Kanaka Maoli rebuild their language and leadership and laws, even amid global development pressures, is so powerful to witness. And so I built mind body energy medicine in this context, you know, to be able to see day by day that every action we take for ourselves and our community is sacred and interconnected. And so that, the colors around us, the sacred geometries of nature, the sounds, smells, foods, the elements of fire, earth, water, air, metal, and wood that move through us, all of these bring us back into balance. Um, and so when I took Apu Adman's Hilat course during the pandemic, I recognized that what I had kind of intuitively cobbled together from my diaspora experience, with Reiki, chiropractic, functional nutrition, but then bringing that together with local ways of knowing, ran parallel to what a traditional healer in the Philippines might, take into consideration as they're doing their work. And so the tools differ, but this intention is the same, right? Of taking all of these different aspects of life into account when someone is coming in with some kind of imbalance or chronic illness. You're not just the illness or the chemical imbalance or you're part of the community, you're part of what is your own self-expression. All of those things come into your experience of health in that moment. So, when it comes to mind body energy medicine, yeah, we're taking all those things into account at the same time. And it's really,
Wow.
it makes it really so rich, and satisfying and fulfilling as a practitioner to be able to see the body, in all the ways, its shadows, its light, um and to just bring love to all of that, because that's
Wow.
ultimately what we're trying to do, right? Is help everyone to find compassion for themselves, for the people around them, for the disconnection that we experience with the land, with each other. So, to be able to bring more healing to that is just worth it.
You know, our the next question was really about you're based in Hawaii, versus your hometown, New Jersey. And we are going to ask about how environment and culture and people impact and shape your healing practice. I mean, you definitely touched on that. And as you were thinking, I was like, wow, yeah, it does make so much more sense, your environment of how you can approach your practice, because whether it's New Jersey or Oakland and Oahu, like, you can almost see, like, maybe you can speak a little bit more, expand on that even more so, on how the environment has affected your own healing practice, maybe for the business as well, but just even for yourself.
Sure. I mean, growing up in New Jersey and New York City in the 70s through the 90s, I didn't grow up with intentional land acknowledgement practices. This is, um my grandparents, my parents, we did grow vegetables in the yard, even in New Jersey. But more for the luxury of freshness, not for subsistence, right? And New York City was vibrant and diverse, but I rarely met any Native Americans from there. I was exposed to indigenous dance and music from the southern Philippines at the time, which was really wonderful. But because there was a dance group there in New York City in the 90s, that did bring, that context, that content to New York City, but it was stripped of its context. It kind of registered as a cultural artistic performance, but we were really missing the whole worldview that informed that practice, right? Because it was pulled out. And then, we didn't have the systems and resources to be able to really immerse in the culture that, these practices came from. So I didn't begin hearing about indigenous ways of knowing it until the early 2000s. But even then, it was hard to relate, right? I moved to California and I met Filipinos that were born and raised in Guahan or Guam. And I also met queer Pacific Islanders in the Bay Area. And then, I started to kind of intellectually begin to understand indigenous Pacific Islanders, um, and how a little bit different from Filipinos in the diaspora, that they held a particular connection and claim to their lands, even when that indigenous Filipino tribes share. But that was hard as a diasporic, sorry, all these words, as a diasporic Filipino, to relate. And so when moving to Hawaii and then connecting to the land, I was finally able to get more of an insight, right? Because here, there is access to the culture, in ways where we can better see and experience for ourselves, you know, through them, a little picture of what that really feels like, to be connected to each other, to the land, in a balanced way.
What I find very interesting in that as well is that, Filipinos have a rich history, whether it's New Jersey or the Bay Area or California. But there's also such a rich Filipino history in the Philippines. And what I heard was that your introduction to Hawaii and learning more about the history there, but then also how a community was created to help for the sovereignty of the local people in Hawaii. There's a different reverence or appreciation for the land and the people as opposed to the land and the people of the East Coast or of California. Um, maybe a little bit stronger. Well, in my opinion, maybe a little bit stronger connection to the people and the land in California, but I feel like it's more displayed and more practiced in Hawaii.
hmm Yeah, I mean, even to my partner is has studied. She's from Guahan, and has studied historic preservation, and she's studied the laws here, and she's seen how powerful that Hawaiians have been able to codify culture, within their laws here. And of course, there's so much more to do, but the fact that they're doing it is really powerful, you know. Yeah. So and it's of course when you see the work here of the Kanaka Maoli, it inspires you to reconnect to the Philippines and to see, how did we do this in the Philippines? And what is happening with indigenous groups in the Philippines? Because I know, we're all having similar issues. We're all connected. And so, of course, yeah, that's where like learning Hilot, of course, became important for me. And that, the fact that it's becoming more accessible now through the work of Hilot Academy, I think is really important. And of course, all of the work to revive Hilot, not just Hilot Academy, there's other efforts in the Philippines to revive and to revalue Hilot. And so, it's really exciting. It's exciting to watch.
We'll get there to we'll get there to the indigenous practices in the Philippines. It's in the trajectory. As you're talking, Dr. Chris, I noticed the batok, or like in some areas it's called batong-batong, batik in the Visayas. And I'm curious to know, and for those that aren't familiar with what that is, Dr. Chris has on their hands, um, I guess traditional hand tapping. tattooing in modern uses of that term on their hands. And I'd love to ask you if you can share with us, as much as you're able to personally share, what you have on your hands, and if that also influences your healing practices, since you're a chiropractor, a Reiki practitioner. I mean, is that also interwoven into your dimensional aspects of healing?
Um, I think at the time, I don't even know when was this? 2016, I think. Um, Lane Wilkin was, I suppose you could say, pioneering in educating Filipinxes on the role of the batok um, in our culture. And he trained in many places, including in Hawaii, and offered the service here. And I never thought I would get a tattoo of any kind. But when he offered the, the practice to our communities, and when I understood the intention around the practice, um, I guess it became an option. And so, with the batok, I guess the way it was practiced, the way the what appealed to me about the practice was that there are certain geometries or symbols from different, regions of the Philippines. And depending on your family lineage, which they ask beforehand, they and then of course the context or the intention around the batok, they're able to kind of bring those two together to be able to provide you with um, a batok that your if when you pass, your soul gets imprinted with these markings, and then your ancestors can recognize you. And so it's just really um just I don't know, it appealed to me. And I think at the time I felt that as part of my healing journey, as part of my healing practice, I felt called to get a batok on my left hand. And so I shared with Lane that this was the hand that I do a lot of my energy work with. And that, my parents are from Batangas and from Ilocos, Ilocana from Cagayan Valley, but born and raised in Mindanao. And so with that, he took that information and then came up with a batok that includes like crocodile teeth on the bottom, which kind of is from Batangas, and then ferns, which is signifies the healing energies, waving away. Oh well, the crocodile teeth too are pointing outward, so like blocking any negative energies from coming in, and then the fern, and then there's also rain, which is about abundance, and nourishment, and then there's stars, um, and which is, of course, that powerful energy. And so yeah, so when I got it, it just felt so right. It wasn't painful at all. It just soaked into my skin and it healed so quickly because I was so ready for it. I was so ready for it. And so it was wonderful. And then at some point, I knew I needed to balance it out. And so I had a batok done on my right hand by Natalia, who apprenticed with Lane at some point. And so it was wonderful to have batok from, a female um, to, and so she actually also included, um, aspects of water, birds, um, as I begin to speak my truth. Yeah, and then I also actually have other hand tattoos who by someone who briefly trained under Lane, but who Jules, is their name, and they actually this is a uh, guava leaf, but from an Ilocano inabel pattern, weaving pattern. And so they were able to take that pattern and then translate that into a batek, which was done with hand poke. So, and also done with ritual. And so they're all very meaningful bata, batek for me, because they signified just all the different things I had to overcome, blocks I had to overcome in myself um, to get to this point. And so they're like markings, celebrations, just reminder of what I've accomplished so far. Because sometimes you get beat down and you forget, and so this is just a way to remember and to connect back to our ancestors, and to the land. Um, yeah, and and then, of course in Hawaii there's such a tradition of tattoo culture here. Um, and so it's just wonderful to be part of it too.
Yeah, and to have your ancestors also guide you in your healing through your hands because you
Exactly.
use so much of it in practice.
Exactly.
I think for those people that are just also listening to this portion of the episode and wondering, oh, how do I also see Lane and the people that you've mentioned? Lane, from what I know, is currently based out of Las Vegas, and you can find Lane Wilkin. Actually, shout out to Lane who provided us with input on our logo design. So the crocodile teeth in our logo, it was approved and consulted by Lane Wilkins. So shout out to Lane on that. Yeah. And then Natalia's based on Oahu, right? What part of Oahu?
I think North Shore.
Okay. And then Jules, if it's the same Jules that I'm thinking about, is based on Victoria Island in
Bulinayan, right?
Canada? Used to be in Montreal. Is that same
There's two
Jules?
jewels that both practice. So I'm not quite sure. Um,
Oh, okay.
I think one of them is definitely based in Canada. The other one here, Canada, kind of in between.
Well, you'll have to find them out
Yes, you'll
there
have.
on the World Wide Web.
Hmm.
Yeah. I love it. It really speaks again and just shows how everything is connected energetically, culturally, tied to the land, tied to the environment, to the animals, the indigenous animal, or am I saying that reason that
Yeah.
animals that are native to those areas that
Right. Right.
remind us or connect to that healing, which just leads into the the title that you came up with. It was multi-dimensional aspects of healing. Um, share with us why you came up with that title and how it connects, like draw the line and how it connects to your mind, body, and energy medicine.
Yeah. Sure. Um, in traditional healing systems like Hilot, your health is not only physical, right? It includes emotional, mental, spiritual, social aspects, and even the relationship between you and the land and the spirits that inhabit it, right? Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, and Ayurvedic traditions all have their own parallel ways of not acknowledging the elements that comprise the human body. So, for instance, in Hilot, um, the earth element is the bones, the flesh, the heart, the musculoskeletal and reproductive systems, you know, and they can be assessed via pulse, right? Water is blood and bodily fluids, the circulatory, lymphatic, and excretory systems, but it's also our ability to socialize, right? Fire is temperature and, thermal regulation, the integumentary, nervous, and digestive systems, but it's also our sense of belonging, right? Air is respiration, the respiratory and auditory systems, but it's also our ability to express ourselves. Spirit is the endocrine and nervous systems and the consciousness of the person, right? So it's interesting to see how in all, if you look at the chakra system, it's similar, right? So where there's different elements, but then it also tells you aspects of beingness. And so it's integrated, it's interrelated. In my Reiki classes, I highlight there's one Japanese understanding of ki. There's the ki of what we call salt and minerals, right? Which I correlate with the solar plexus. So that ki is actually your force field, but it's also your sense of your boundaries and your worth. So of course, in the society where where farming soils are depleted of minerals, and sugar just pervades the food supply, it's no wonder we have an epidemic of lifestyle diseases, digestive imbalances, and crises of self-worth. so so recognizing the intimate link between our physical systems and our way of being is just so, fascinating, right? So when I was asked to uplevel my own health and my patients' health, new tools came in. So sound bowls came in, tuning forks came in, flower essences, gem elixirs came in, along with the adjusting and percussive instruments I already use. And with all of this at my disposal, I began asking each person's body, how do we approach your situation? Which elements are out of balance? Which chakras, organs, systems, meridians, emotional or spiritual aspects are involved? Is there an ancestral aspect to this way of being that is been pervasive, that has been passed down to help us to survive? Is there even, for some people, a past life component to this aspect? So, when you see your symptoms as your body's way of bringing healing attention to a protective stress response, a chakra, an organ meridian emotion, you begin to read beyond the physical. So, symptoms from nutritional imbalances may be calling you to become someone who can hold healthy boundaries and stand for what you need. And so with that, you may go home with a solar plexus chakra affirmations, or tapping points, or Reiki with breath work, or flower essence blends to calm the liver, or spleen pancreas meridian emotions. So that's kind of the game we're playing here. Forest therapy can help heal the heart chakra. Ocean walks deliver the vitamin C to a depleted energy system. Creating an altar to honor your ancestors' gifts and survival strategies allows you to compassionately heal intergenerational trauma in your lifetime. So it's these small moments of awareness that build the body's energy, right? Chronic symptoms loosen their grip. With practitioner support during these catalytic moments, you move closer to embodying your higher self. So as you deepen your respect for your body, um, these ripples reach your family and your community, and you contribute to a culture of standing for one's needs while embodying compassion, forgiveness, and better ways of being in relationship with each other and the land.
Mm.
So
You know,
Oh my gosh.
you know what's so awesome about, well, as you were sharing that, the thought that kept coming up to me is like, man, we should all just go back to our tribal practices, like our tribal, just being tribal, because we lose sight of all that stuff that was available to us to really take care of ourselves on so many different levels. But instead, we're in the concrete jungle taking on stresses that we don't need to necessarily take on, or we don't know how to deal with those stresses because we've lost our tribal practices.
yes, yes, definitely marking.
Just you painting the picture of walking in the ocean for some vitamin C, like, oh man, I could totally use that right now,
Vitamins. Yay, yes. That needs to be a real vitamin.
right?
I just love how you broke down like the elements with the body and what they were tied to and the treatments. I was like, "Oh my gosh." It all just I could see the fascia that you were explaining, in your words, and, um, oh, I don't I'm like speechless in some ways and aspects, just because just the interconnectedness of everything on how we take care of ourselves. And I love that mind body energy medicine is all about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Earlier when you were saying you work on patients between like 30 to 50 that have a lot of stress, I'm like, Hawaii? No, there can't be stress in Hawaii. It's so calm. And you're like, they're stressed.
Yeah. I mean, it is an occupied country. Um, dealing with the stresses of modern development and
Yeah.
um yeah.
And a lot of people go there to de-stress, not realizing that there's
Mm.
stress
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
there.
I mean, it's challenging to live here, financially and um,
And
and
just dealing with
even
tourists.
yeah, yeah. And not coming in a way that is respectful and honoring. Um, and there look I mean now there are ways to visit Hawaii in a way that is respectful and honoring. There are um nonprofits and organizations that offer opportunities to connect to the land and to learn more about Hawaiian culture. And so I urge people, if they do feel called to visit, to really access those opportunities. And to come in a way that is respectful and honoring.
Yeah, I love that you're promoting that for sure.
It is a powerful healing place, and so that's why people come. It is. And so it's hard to resist that pressure, but and when I see it in my patients that, for whatever reason they're called here, and then when it's time for them to go, they are pushed out. So I think there's the land itself has power. Um, a- as I've learned from practitioners here, and so
Yeah, that's why
respect
I'd
that.
asked that question earlier, like, when you were talking about, the connection. Like, that connection is a very visceral thing when you are, especially if you're in that energy work, when you do energy work, like, that energy is more palpable there than it is stateside or mainland
Mm-hmm.
side,
Mm-hmm.
because there
Yeah,
is
it's
such a
very
pride, like, the consciousness that the locals have about the community and the land and everything else that's involved in it. Like, there's such a
mm-hmm.
vibration there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A vibration
Yeah.
we take for granted.
Definitely. Definitely. There's so much to learn here.
As you were talking about that, also, I couldn't help but think about the relations all across the Pacific. It reminded me of also how the Maoris um, treat Aotearoa, and we didn't talk about that this yet on this episode. But when we were preparing for it, Dr. Chris, you also mentioned that you spent time in Guaha and in Guam. Did that also influence your aspects of healing, your healing journey, your time spent either visiting or being there?
Mm. Yeah, in Guahan or Guam, um, it's an island about 160,000 people or so. And and really the Filipinos there that I had met are the ones that really introduced me, to the initial, to these concepts of Filipinos as, working in solidarity with indigenous communities. And so, when my partner is from there, and so I moved there for about a year, um, just right after the typhoon. And so, which was what, 2023. And um, it was powerful to move there even after the typhoon. Like, it was just 2 weeks after, I think, when they were still recovering. Um, and to choose that experience of um, being in a place that was, powerfully impacted by nature, I think after that time was when the LA fires happened too. Just a lot of upheaval is happening around the world. And so to be there at that time, I think was really helpful and important for my spiritual journey. Um, I think, Guam is also recovering from, the economy was already recovering from COVID. And so then to put the typhoon on top of that has made it even more challenging. And the fact that another typhoon just came around recently and just again introduced disruption to the economy, I think was really challenging. But so during that time when I was there, it's helpful to connect to the land again and to do whatever energy work that I could that I was called to do when I was there. But at that time, they were having hearings on building a missile defense system in Guam. And this missile defense system requires, like, they're looking at, I don't know, a certain number of sites all around the island where they would, have firing systems and, like these big uh, radar or radio radar balls all around the island, which is disrupting the natural cultural landscape. And then they were talking about, with the power being unstable from all these storms, but they were talking about powering all these different stations with little nuclear, power plants. And I was just like, what? It's hard with
Yeah, there's a lot of
Guahan.
environmental pollution.
Yeah, with Guahan being still being, one of the few colonies in the world, under the US, and not having its own sovereignty, so hard for folks to be able to speak out and to, register their concerns around, yeah, the impact on the environment, the impact on the community, now becoming even more of a target, a military target because of these, actions. And so, to understand and to be in a place, this beautiful sacred island, um, and to realize that it's a war front. It was a war front in World War II, and it continues to have this legacy. And I don't I wasn't able to, I think, adapt in the way that was needed for me to be able to stay there. So unfortunately, I ended up moving back to Hawaii. But then I moved back to Hawaii. When I moved back, I really, I had a different viewpoint on what Hawaii was to me, and that perhaps this was, yeah, I just had a different viewpoint. And so just much more gratitude, a lot more humbled by just everything in the world, a lot more, you know, uh, I think grounded even more so to the land and its power. Um, so yeah, it was important learning and spiritual journey for me to be in Guam at that time. Yeah. But so yeah, so I've been in a process here in Hawaii of rebuilding my practice. Um and it was actually a super creative time in Guahan. So I continue to modify and refine my work. So coming here, it really feels good. And so I think when I roll out teaching the knowing method, which is what I call the method I do here, which is, a mix of all the things that I've learned before, kind of put into this one system. Um, I feel like I feel really good about it.
So
About teaching.
with your practice, I mean, again, just to reiterate with that example about Guam, how land is so tied to our well-being, and the disruption of the environment really has a profound effect on our well-being. And I'm glad that you said that, because I think that's something. I think it's a good reminder for us, especially with AI coming out and all these data centers that are being, starting to pop up. Like, I know in Utah, there's a huge concern because the environmental cost that's going to take on the environment there. So again, I'm really glad that you said that. Um, Going back to your practice, mind body energy medicine practice, uh, is there is there is there something that you specialize in specifically in that work, um, and in that specializing, is there a particular demographic that you work with, or who do you typically see?
Mhm. Um, the folks who come through are mostly in their 30s to 50s, empathic leaders, healers, creatives, academics who are navigating the chronic health issues, rooted in being out of balance in their giving and their receiving, right? So, you know, folks are dealing with chronic pain, with autoimmune issues, with migraines, skin or gut issues, depression, anxiety, even creative blocks or work or caregiving burnout. So those are really the folks that for whom sometimes, modern medicine comes up short. And so they're looking for deeper answers and willing to look deeper and into what is at the core. Um, and especially because they've hit walls in other places, or they realize that they want a more complex view and are willing to look and understand and implement these more natural healing processes because some of again modern medicine doesn't quite address or they don't want to deal with the side effects of some of those things. So it's like, okay, how do we um be able to augment our healing on a natural level. Maybe at the same time they may be doing Western medicine as well, but at least they're doing what they can on their side to try to strengthen their bodies so that they can overcome and on a emotional and spiritual level what's going on, what their body is trying to tell them. Um, so I guess they say chronic conditions reflect a state of stubborn inflexibility.
Always say that again. Say that again.
Ooh, you have so many gems.
Do chronic conditions reflect a state of stubborn inflexibility? It's a hard question.
Hmm.
It's a question I've had to ask myself too. Do I admit that I'm stubborn and inflexible? Well, if this particular, issue is not going away, then there's something there that is just
Oh,
not, you know,
wow.
there's a
I'm gonna
perspective
have
that
to.
I'm that there
I'm,
there's a
We call that
I'm not
I'm gonna
willing
have
to
to. I'm gonna have
embrace
to
yet.
take that from you. Yeah.
we call that in our diaspora hard-headed or matagas
Yeah.
ng ulo,
Yeah.
Tigas sa
Uh-huh.
ulo.
Uh-huh.
right? Strong-headed.
So a multi-dimensional approach kind of helps chip away at the stubbornness, in a more in a gentle way. um
But as
but yeah,
back to your
what?
demographics, though,
Say that again.
the demographics of the people you said, activists and who else? Who?
Empathic leaders, healers, creatives, academics, navigating chronic
Okay,
health issues,
right. So
overgiving.
my question for you, because I focus in my practice, I specifically focus on artists, creatives, and activists. So what is your why on focusing on those people? I'm curious to hear your answer in that.
Is there a why or that's who ends up coming to you?
Oh, that's a great question.
um, well, a lot of them are sensitive intuitives. They're sensitive intuitives. They feel things that, they're like the black sheep in the family that just can't hold in their emotions. They feel things, Um and then they're like, gosh, I don't want to suffer anymore. How do I not suffer? How do I stop struggling, right? How do I let go of these ways of being that and thinking that don't serve? They're open to creative ways of approaching problems and issues, right? Cuz yeah, you can come here, but if you're not open to seeing and hearing and implementing some of these things, then the benefits are limited. You'll get benefit. I mean, because each modality in and of itself is beneficial, right? Chiropractic is beneficial, Reiki is beneficial. Um, but if you want to get that you want to get to that deeper knowing, that deeper kind of understanding of why, that requires persistence, that requires, it's what they call the work, right, of healing, the deeper work of healing. And so this place here, we totally understand you. I understand you here. Because that's what I'm here to help folks do, is to move through some of those deeper issues and to release them and to integrate them. There's actually a chiropractor that Sue Brown. She had developed a technique called biogeometric integration technique. Um, but I quote her in my book because she talks about how, gosh, each experience that we have um, is we're like walking symphonies, basically. And so any dissonance that we have in our bodies from experiences that were too powerful at the time to integrate gets stored. um Sometimes there's so many experiences that get stored that we start to feel them, and they create distortion in our energy fields, right? But eventually we store them because at some point we're being called to integrate those experiences. And when you have that experience of integration where you're able to change, like turn that narrative of pain and suffering into a narrative of of healing, of understanding, of forgiveness, of understanding how this is actually shaping me to someone even more powerful. When you're able to reframe those narratives and think of that situation again, but in a way that's not as energetically charged, that's kind of integration. And so when you are able to turn that dissonance into an experience of harmony, you're able to hold more of that it adds to the complexity of your symphony. And so
Wow.
evolution becomes uh, a matter of, life forms continuing to integrate more and more frequencies so that they can
That's
become
such a great
complex.
analogy.
I mean, obviously, with a chiropractic work, it's in person, right? Uh, do you work primarily in person, or do you do online as well, as far as like energy work and how does that even work?
Reiki, especially when you get to level 2, are able to work at a distance. I mean, they've done studies trying to show the impact of energy work at a distance. But yes, I do work online, and do offer Reiki, while at the same time I'm also able to do intuitive nutrition work. I'm able to do, of course, lifestyle guidance as well, online. So maybe I'm not doing the actual, physical adjustments, but I'm still able to do the energy work and all the other advising, whatever it is that your body's trying to tell you. We can do online as well. Yeah.
Mhm. So, couple of questions then. If people were seeking to seeking your services, Uh, one, uh, form of payment, or do you take insurance? The other thing would be also, ballpark figure of typically what it would look like to work with you.
Hmm. Um, for local patients in Hawaii, I'm able to take limited insurance. I think I take HMAA and some HMSA, which is the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Hawaii. But even there, they've changed some of their policies in April, and so that's been a little challenging to figure out. But that portion just covers the chiropractic piece of the work that I do. The rest of the energy work, and all the other nutrition work is out of pocket. So, and then of course online it would also be out of pocket and not covered by insurance. But sessions generally range around 200 for an hour, but I also offer sliding scale as well, because even as this is a premium service, right, not a lot of people do this kind of work. But I also, my roots are in the community, and I want to be accessible as well. So on one side I have the signature premium kind of program, and then on the other side I have the sliding scale per visit offer as well.
The
So it just really
local
depends.
rate.
Yeah, yeah. So like I'll have like sliding scale coupons, up to 50% for folks. So
That's great. That's
Nice,
awesome.
Kamaina. Being that we're a Filipinx Filipino global podcast, what do you feel, Dr. Chris, are three health and wellness challenges? I know that's a lot to ask. How do you hone it down into three? But if you were to pick three that you are commonly facing in your practice or concerns that our community faces, what would those three be? And how would mind body energy medicine help to address these
okay.
three that you identify?
Okay. So well, there's the Filipino value of kapwa, right? That sense of shared identity and interconnectedness, right? Which is beautiful, but when it's out of balance, right, it can lead to a loss of boundaries, emotional exhaustion as we absorb everyone else's problems. We place, family and community needs above our own. We sacrifice our own mental health and our dreams, or we suffer
Uh,
for others, which then breeds like deep resentment, right? And so I've been there, I've done all those
True.
things. And so, my burnout is what led me to create a practice like this, where the energy work, the chiropractic, the traditional healing can really help to nourish us back into a more healthy balance, you know, um, so that kapwa is a strength, um and rather than something where we have to overcompensate and drain ourselves for. um at the same time, the nutrition in the work, I think one of the controversial things that comes up in my practice, and I'm sure is a rub with the community, is, and I know the research is mixed, right? um but I think nightshades for some people can be really hard on our systems. Not all people, I'm like some people, right? So tomatoes, white potatoes, bell peppers, eggplants, and actually even okra is related sometimes. That they're having a hard time controlling inflammation and they don't know why. And so I feel like um and these are staples. These are staple vegetables in the Filipino diet, right? Especially
Oh my
potatoes
gosh.
and the eggplants and the okra.
Talong, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The
But
okra and the pinakbet. I'm like,
I
oh my
know, I
god.
know, so hard. So, but for folks who are dealing with chronic pain, chronic joint pain, they may want to consider, eliminating it for 2 or 3 weeks just to kind of detox, and then see how they feel, and then maybe you can bring it back one at a time to just kind of again see how that impacts your body. And that really, when it comes to elimination diets, that's kind of the gold standard of of food allergy testing, is just basically experimenting with yourself and seeing how you feel, right? Because you can take tests and you can get results, but those results are for you at that moment. It might not be you 2 3 weeks from now. Right? So in any case, I encourage folks to maybe consider, cutting those down and just seeing how your body feels. And these nightshades, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that they may stress the body. Maybe there's particular toxins in them that the body is not able to break down for whatever reason, and so they accumulate in the joints. Or it could be
Well,
because it's
I'm
impacting
sorry.
gut. Gut. Hmm?
Can
Did
you
I go
explain nightshades? Nightshades?
nightshade? Oh,
Is that,
so
is that what you said?
nightshade. Yeah, yeah. So nightshades are tomatoes, white potatoes, bell peppers, eggplants, even sometimes okra, even sometimes goji berries or ashwagandha. They have a little hat on them. That's why it's called a nightshade. But sometimes some of them have particular toxins in them that the body, for whatever reason, is having a hard time breaking down. And so then they begin to accumulate those toxins in the joints. Or it could be it's contributing to leaky gut. There are a lot of different mechanisms. Again, the research is very mixed and spotty. Some say it's harmful, some say it's totally not harmful and beneficial. But that's what they also say about MSG right now. And I know when I have MSG, I have a migraine. So, your personal experience is the most relevant and important. And so that's why I ask people, it may come up for some people. And if they're trying to figure out the joint pain, the arthritis, and it's not going away and it's chronic, that's one possibility to consider. I know not popular, but and a lot of people, people are ashwagandha has been, marketed as a really impactful adaptogen, especially for folks who are stressed. And you see it like, in the aisles in Ross even, or all these like discount stores. But ashwagandha is a nightshade, and so again, maybe, you know, some other holistic practitioners don't believe this, but sometimes I feel like it's overused. And that may also have side effects. And so again, use your intuition to consider what kind of adaptogen is most relevant for you at this time. Is it ashwagandha, or is there other adaptogens like tulsi or other herbs or even vitamins like vitamin C that can help? But yeah, and then the other point is again around nutrition. It's around so I refer to the Chinese medicine Oregon meridian chart when I do my work, right? And so in Chinese medicine, the liver meridian relates to feelings of anger and frustration and aggression. And so if you're struggling with those emotions, sometimes consuming foods or substances like alcohol that tax the liver can actually make you be more prone to having, to experiencing those feelings, right? Or the spleen pancreas meridian. It relates to lack of control, low self esteem, worry, anxiety of the future. And so after a tough day, many of us reach for sugar to stimulate that. We reach for sugar because of those overwhelming feelings. And so that sugar actually helps to kind of move the energy around those feelings. And so you may feel better temporarily, but in the long term, you're going to be more prone to those emotions, right? If you keep reaching for sugar. So yeah, so I kind of see, I try to educate in my practice around how sometimes nutrition can really help you get even further in your work around your own emotional well-being. So, you could do the therapy around, liver, through issues of anger and frustration, aggression, or you could do therapy around issues of self-esteem and worry. But, if you're also able to add the nutritional component to it, you know, even more powerful.
Wow. Yeah, so there you go. If you have that angry family member or person in your household, you might want to watch
The sugar intake.
the red
Yeah.
horse or the or the ensamada that they're gonna eat in the morning.
Yeah, but right? Because when people realize, gosh, if I cut my sugar, I might actually feel a little bit more grounded and a little bit clearer and less insecure. That that sounds good to me. That could be incentive to cut down on my sugar. Why not?
Right? Hide the tanduay. So, as we asked this of all of our guests. That was a really great way to summarize three health challenges and how your approach to it, Dr. Chris. Now, this next question we ask of all of our guests that are on our podcast: how do you personally practice self-care or wellness outside of work? You are a healer in multi-dimensional ways. Now, what do you do personally to rest and refill your cup?
Hmm. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, I definitely do my own kind of energy work, just to, clear any residual energies. But then one of the key things is really sleeping early. I'm a morning person, so I try to get in bed or try to sleep by 9:30. I mean, if I do, I'm golden. Often I don't, but it's a goal. But your energy organs, the thyroid and adrenals, which govern metabolism and the movement of chi, they actually regenerate between 9 and 11 p.m. So resting or ideally sleeping during that window actually optimizes hormone balance and also helps you to conserve energy for the next day. So that's like a key. I found that even though I have access to all kinds of supplements, things like that, it's not a replacement for sleep, early sleep. So I learned that actually in Guahan. Constructive rest. So like if I'm tired or emotional, or just feeling tired in the middle of the day, I'll actually lie down and do what's called a 90-degree leg raise, or it's called the constructive rest position. And it actually, so it's like you're lying in front of like a chair and you put your legs up, to prop it on the chair so you can kind of relax the low back. It lowers cortisol, it calms the fight or flight response, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and then it decompresses the tension in the neck and low back. So I do that quite often. When I'm feeling tired, I'll just go to my bedroom, lie down and lie on the floor and prop my legs up on the bed actually, and just kind of, you know, decompress. Or maybe I'll do some emotional or energy work during that time. The other thing I do is sing on carpool karaoke, sing on the way home from, it's a great way to just cleanse the energies, move the energies. Also, it increases what they call vagal tone, which is an important part of health, and that's a whole nother episode. But singing karaoke is actually very healing. And then yeah, eating
What's your
really
go-to?
healthy
What's your
and
go-to song?
oh my gosh. Oh, I'll put on like okay, this is totally dating me, but a Depeche Mode radio station.
Love the Depeche Mode.
That's awesome.
Some kind of 90s song 90s song mix cuz that's I'm a child of the 90s, right? So, um yeah, and then of course I walk my talk, so I definitely I get migraines, so I eat simple foods. I avoid the inflammatory triggers. And then yeah, sunshine, ocean time regularly and making space for art and community. Those are all my practices. Well, not all of them. A lot of
Nice.
most of them. My go-tos.
A lot that we can learn from, though, in this episode from you, Dr. Chris. As we begin to close, remind our community how to best reach reach you If they have additional questions, tell us what the title of your book again, and where to find it. And also, if they like to book a session with you, what is the best way to contact you?
Mm. The the absolute best way is through my website at drchrislipat.com. Um, and there, of course, also my email, which is drchrislipat@gmail.com. I also have an Instagram which is at drxlipat. X like Chris, like Christmas. Facebook, my handle is just Dr. Chris Lipat. And then I actually even have a YouTube, but I only have a couple of videos on there, but I may put more, especially as I get my class together around the knowing method. But it's, I think, Dr. Chris Lipat DC Mind Body Energy on YouTube. The book is called, again, Knowing The Intuitive's Guide to Transformative Healing, which is available on my website. Well, a link is available from my website to Amazon and to Kobo, Kobo. And then actually on the knowing page on my site also includes free downloadable knowing method healing charts, which go with the book. But you could also just get a sense of what I'm talking about when I talk about the knowing method and all the different things that go into it. Uh, yeah, I also have a line of flower essence and gem elixir blends called Bituin Elixirs, so that you can find on my website. And I actually also have, when you do a lot of this healing work, this intuitive work, I don't know, I started getting into art, and I haven't been visual art, and I haven't really been raised in that, or practiced that, or been trained in it specifically. But I created this line of art called Bye Bye In Creatives, which includes some wall art, t-shirts, stickers, and coasters, and they're all on my website too. So actually that the piece that I described in the beginning, that's a piece that I just created for my practice, with the tea plants. And then there's also actually a batek symbol on that art piece as well as some bye in pagtugmain, which means to harmonize. Mhm.
Wow.
And I think
Wow.
those are, and then of course on my website you could sign up on my email list to follow me on Instagram, or follow me on Instagram or Facebook for updates on my first knowing method classes. Because I've been teaching the knowing method, but I integrate it into my Reiki classes. And so actually my Reiki classes too, in Honolulu, are also on my website as well, the schedule.
Dr. Chris, we covered a lot of ground today, and went in a lot of different directions, all which was so informative, so grateful that we were able to experience and hear your experience, your journey. Uh, are there any final words that you would like to share with our community that we may have missed when it comes to your multi-dimensional aspects of healing?
Sure. So in my book, Knowing, I share a way to access your higher knowing and uncover the subconscious blocks that keep you stuck in survival patterns. And also a way to source creative and efficient solutions from the world of energy to shift the world of form. So I find if you agree, and are interested, health challenges are really an invitation to soften into a greater well-being, clarity, and spiritual alignment. So by honoring your intuition, whether it's through muscle testing, like what I do, or seeing, or just knowing or hearing, you can identify the blocks that you're dealing with on the physical, nutritional, emotional, energetic, and ancestral levels that keep your body locked in survival mode. And then you can source those, bespoke solutions for lasting change. So very soon I'll be teaching a course to help people build their own multidimensional self-healing protocols so you can care for yourself and your loved ones with greater discernment and efficiency. Yeah. So I look forward to you know, serving folks in this new way. So just keep in touch and follow me on the different social media outputs and you know, I'll be sharing more on that in the future.
That's that's awesome. And I think just to kind of reiterate, because I know there's a lot of people out there that are doing the work, but sometimes they experience a block or a blind spot and they can't identify what that block is for themselves. So being able to look into those different resources that you provide for them to take a look at could be super valuable. Because I know there's blind spots that I have that I'm like, I'm doing the work, but there's something that's missing. So I'm very curious myself to take a look at that. And people can find that on through your book as well, you said?
Yeah, through my book and then also on my website, which talks about the book,
On your
there is a
website.
link to some free healing charts, just to kind of see what's covered or what's included. And you could, if you're already intuitive, you can begin to just use it yourself.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, Dr. Chris, thank you so much. Mahalo for taking the time to talk to our community about the multi-dimensional aspects of healing. We're super excited to witness your journey unfold with this important work and how your practice will evolve with ongoing introduction of different modalities. We look forward to staying connected in partnership and sharing your upcoming opportunities with our global diaspora.
And to our community, for the fourth episode of our sixth season, we sail further and split across the Pacific Ocean to Aotearoa, New Zealand, to interview health and exercise coach Sarah Kane, along with Los Angeles based Earn Not Given Club co founders and coaches JR Mendoza and Jorge Chin, who are both returning to the podcast from our initial season. Stay tuned as Exercise, Strength Training, and Aging will air on Wellness Wednesday, July 15, 2026. As we close, we'd like to acknowledge once again our guest speaker, Dr. Chris Lipat. Happy Pride, y'all. Our Philippine ex our Philippine X and Wellness team, our advisors, our community partners, Kilawin Kolektibo, and all of our community members for your shares and support. As always, you can find more about our guest offerings on our Instagram stories and saved in our highlights, so you'll have access to their upcoming events. Be sure to follow us at Philippine X and Wellness on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Philippine X and Wellness YouTube channel. If you like what we're bringing and you'd like more, show us some love by buying us a coffee or Ko-Fi, or take advantage of our offerings via our monthly membership on Patreon. Thank you always for believing in us. Be well, everyone. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other. And in the dialect of my mom and Dr. Chris's lineage, daghang salamat.
Thank you all.
Maraming salamat.
Hello, everyone. Magandang araw. This is Sheena Katz and Mark King, and we are the hosts of Philippine X and Wellness, a podcast rooted in community, culture, and collective healing for the Philippine X community.
And today we are super excited to announce something we've been dreaming up for a while. We are launching our official Patreon.
This is your invitation to ride along with us. If our episodes have ever made you feel seen, witnessed, or naintindihan, then this is your space to be part of what keeps it going.
Your support on Patreon directly funds our ability to keep creating, covering production costs, bringing on more brilliant guests, and expanding what this community can be.
We've also created some very special offerings for our members, things like exclusive bonus contents, Filipino health and wellness products, invitations to live wellness events, digital resources, and more.
Whether you're joining for $1 a month or $20, know that every contribution fuels a movement. one where Filipino wellness is visible, centered, and celebrated.
So if you've been vibing with us, learning with us, and would like to see more, come join us on Patreon. Let's strengthen this movement together.
Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat.